Welcome to Agawam Bowl for the semifinal match from the Western New England Pro Tour event. In this match, Brian Mayer is facing Nick Norcross. Brian was the number 3 seed, and he's fresh off a win over Jim Hayott in the quarterfinals. And Nick Norcross was the number 2 seed. There's a great shot by Nick Norcross for a spare to begin. He had the 1, 2, 7, and 10 and was able to convert by going to the right side of the head pin. Brian Mayer will begin with a 9. Here's a look at the spare by Nick Norcross. A little bit of help from the wood, but that probably would have gone even without it. So he will be off to a lead to start with. He'll add 5, so it's a 6-pin lead through the first box. Piece of wood escapes there, so Peter Pereira goes down to remove it, and Nick is back to shooting the spare. It was actually almost the same leave he had in the first box. This time he had the 4 horsemen left plus the 10. And that'll be just a 7 for Nick in the second box. So he'll lose a couple of pins to Brian Mayer, who records a 9. Nick on the head pin in the third box, light 1-2 pocket hit. Leaves a pretty tricky combination though. 6, 7, 9, and 10. A couple of pieces of wood that he might be able to use. Brian punches out the half Worcester left side. And Nick with a nice try, but he wasn't able to get that the 7 and the 9. Pretty tough to cover all 4 of those pins with that piece of wood. Brian looking for an out, and they'll both have 8 boxes there, so through 3 boxes, Nick Norcross leads by 4. He has 30-26 for Brian Mayer. And there's a half Worcester right. So we're getting off to a little bit of a slow start, with the exception of that spare in the first box. But the scoring conditions at Agawam have been on the stingy side, as I think I mentioned. There was one big score in qualifying. That was the I think it was 673 by Rich Bober, the top seed. But other than that, the scores were all in the 16s or lower, and down to the 5th place seed Jim Hayott, who had a 589 for 5 strings in the qualifying round. But there was a strike by Nick Norcross. Solid 1-2 pocket hit, as you will see on the replay in slow motion. 6-pin being the last one to go. So that will give Nick 47 through 5 plus the strike fill. Brian on the head pin, dropping 8. He's got the 2 and 4 2-pinner. And he misses that. That's kind of uncharacteristic for Brian. He's normally one of the most consistent bowlers on the scene. But he'll take a 9, and that's going to give him 44, as you can see, to 47 with the ball. Nick Norcross working on that strike. 47 plus the fill. So as they switch lanes. Brian Mayer is on lane 18 and Nick on lane 17 in the 1-3 pocket, but a little bit high, and he's got the 4-5-7, which is probably, it's certainly one of the most difficult of the commonly found spare leaves. Unless you happen to get just the right wood, it's a very difficult shot to convert. So Nick will take a 9 fill on the strike. That gives him 56, or a 12-pin lead through 5. And he loses 1 with the 9 against the 10 by Brian. Brian Mayer with a nice 1-2 pocket hit, but he has very little to show for it. 6, 7, and 9, and a strike by Nick Norcross. Here's another look at it. This time Nick crosses over onto the 1-3 side, but another very solid hit. The 8-pin is takes a while to make up its mind, but that's another strike for Nick Norcross in the 7th box. Now let's see what Brian can do with this split. He undoubtedly tried to use the wood. He went to the left end, trying to get the ball to cover the 7 and have the wood go over and cover the 6-9. Pretty difficult to do. And he'll take a 9 in the 7th. Just 63 through 7. Kind of a contrast with the 135 he had in the quarterfinal. Same lanes, same everything, but having a more difficult go of it in this game. And they both had that half Worcester left this time. Nick Norcross with a nice recovery ball to put an 8 fill on the strike. Now he has a 20-pin lead through, now through 8. Through 8, it's 93 for Nick and 73 for Brian. So Brian needs a couple of marks here at the end. And once again, a nice ball in the 1-2 pocket by Brian Mayer, but he just doesn't get much of a reward out of it. He has 6, 8, and 10, a couple of pieces of wood that might help, but it's going to be difficult to cover all 3 of these. And you can see what happened. The one wood went one way and the other went the other way, and neither one of them hit the 6-pin. So it'll be a 9 box for Brian. That means he'll almost certainly need a double in the 10th, because it's still a 20-pin lead for Nick Norcross. And wouldn't you know it, another head pin hit and another 7 drop with a split. So Brian has, it's not his fault. He's thrown some excellent first balls here and just not had any kind of breaks to show for it. But anyway, a little disgusted, he just tosses the 3rd ball down there. It'll be an 8 box, and in this low scoring match, Nick Norcross will defeat Brian Mayer and move on to the final match. As you see, the final score, Nick Norcross 111, Brian Mayer 90.